to sit and watch this happen, and it's disgusting. And I know we sound like a broken record how the media just covers it up, like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. I mean, we have seen so many times how parents will go to the absolute extremes to protect the bad behavior of their child. I mean, why would we think someone who's evidence that they do this wouldn't continue to do it now just because they're in the office of presidency?
Yeah, I got a little. There's some audio. If you guys can. Okay, I just got the comment back. Everything's all good. Okay, so we were a little quiet before. So anyway, let's. Why are you running for Secretary of State, Kristina?
Yeah, unsecured elections are a state national security risk. That's why I'm running, because, we've been involved in politics for some time. And even though we've become friends and we continue to be active in politics, but the primary reason why all of us are politically active is to create change and make sure that the individuals we feel best represent our interests are in power. And that doesn't just go for Republicans. That goes for any person. I don't care if you're Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party. That's why you're involved. And so when the election system is corrupted, then that means that the citizens have lost power over their government. A fundamental tenet of our power in America is, if you look at our Declaration of Independence, and it says the government derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and we give our consent through the election process. And so while I was at the TCF Center in Detroit, I was a poll challenger, and I saw illegal ballots cast, and I actually contested the illegal ballots being cast. And actually, I had an argument with the gentleman overseeing the TCF Center that time in the night. It was about 5 in the morning. 4 or 5 in the morning, somewhere around that time. And actually, him and I had a big argument because he was instructing the adjudicator to push through an illegal ballot. So, I mean, and I could go on and on about the TCF Center and all the horrible things. We hear the stories, the pizza boxes going up, suspicious activity around the military ballots, things that didn't follow protocol surrounding military ballots. For example, when I'm talking about the military ballots, the way a military or uniformed overseas voter votes is that they download an absentee ballot from that's either emailed to them by the clerk, or they can go to a State Department website, or there's like a federal write-in ballot, because of course clerks aren't going to mail out ballots to Iraq, Korea, Afghanistan. So one of the things I observed were, when we were watching what was supposed to be the duplication of military ballots, is some of these ballots supposedly coming back from overseas were a standard ballot form. Now, it's not that the law precludes a clerk from mailing out a ballot to a uniformed overseas voter or their family member. It's just that's not the process of how it's done.
Yeah.
So, and why would a clerk waste the money to mail out a physical ballot to someone in a foreign country when they could easily download it and the person mail it in and they duplicate it? It doesn't make any sense. So it was just a series of things like that occurred. And, when we call for election reform, oftentimes, it's painted as you're just a disgruntled Republican. We see the same shenanigans that happened in 2020 happening in the city elections. Jocelyn Benson's mailing out absentee ballot applications unsolicited again. Detroit did their...
Which is a massive waste of money.
It's a massive waste of money, and a judge...
I guess they got the results they wanted, so I guess it wasn't a waste of money. But it's an abuse of our tax dollars, for sure.
That's a great point. It's an abuse of our tax dollars. And the voter rolls, the qualified voter file, is completely inaccurate. I mean, people were receiving absentee ballot applications at their parents' home in their maiden name. If that... how did that happen? I had a person tell me they received an absentee ballot application for a deceased loved one who never lived in the home. And the person died as a minor. So they were never registered to vote because they died as a minor 16 years ago, but yet they received an absentee ballot application for this minor who died 16 years ago.
There was a story
in the house they never lived in.
And this didn't happen in Michigan, but someone got an absentee application for their dog. I'm not joking.
So that's the question. Who is messing with the qualified voter file? And a judge ruled against clerks doing it. This was recent, not too long ago. I need to get the exact case number because I share this a lot. But a judge actually ruled that clerks can't do it. So if the clerks can't do it, why can't the Secretary of State do it? I mean, why should the Secretary of State be able to do it? And then you have Detroit conducting an accuracy test over Zoom. I mean, if there's an issue...
that was a big problem.
Yeah, if there's an issue...
Well, it is a big problem. I don't know. We did talk about it here, did mention it here. But maybe not a huge enough stink was raised about it, but why would you do that over, especially knowing how much animosity people had toward the election, whether you believe it was run smoothly or not, which people involved in Detroit politics, I think they know just in general that it's really not done well. even things that aren't done like maliciously, like for example, my sister would go around, canvassing the area during like election time when she worked for the Michigan Republican Party, and would just see like just different protocols and stuff they would do. They're not supposed to do, like having one-sided stuff posted for the people that they want up at at the polling places, and even just stuff like that. It's not run properly, and so which people can mess up from time to time, but Detroit's had a lot of issues.
Yeah, and that's the problem, and it's all over the state, and they shouldn't be allowed to get away with it. That's the problem, is that these individuals violate election law, and it's like, oh, they can just do whatever they want, and that's the problem. Our clerks received no support from Jocelyn Benson. As a matter of fact, she continued to change rules constantly. We've been talking to clerks. They said we couldn't keep up. You don't just change the rules constantly throughout the game, if you will, or throughout the process. My background is in education. And if I expect my students to be successful, I'm going to make sure they have all the things in place. They know all what's expected of them in the very beginning. Then they're also going to have the tools they need to be successful. I'm not going to change things 5 or 6 times and expect them to be successful. And then by her mailing out those absentee ballot applications unsolicited, many people like myself, I received about 5 applications. And so many people, after receiving applications multiple times, they assumed, well, I guess the clerk didn't get it. So I need to mail it in again, and again, and again, and again. And every time a person mailed in an absentee ballot application, the clerks had to process that.
There was something else that I heard from clerks that were really frustrating them, because they would, wanted to know what was going on with the election and the decision she was going to make. And she just kind of dropped things in the press, and that's when they found out there wasn't good communication. But people had a different interpretation of early day voting. Like they were saying it was early day voting. Michigan doesn't have early day voting. So people would believe that they could just go to the clerk's office to vote. And it's like, well, we issued you a ballot. Where's your ballot? They're like, well, I thought we could just come here and vote early. Like, no, that's not what we do in Michigan. So they'd have to invalidate the ballot that they did have, and so it just was a big mess for them. And these clerks do other things than run elections, and this just became a huge mess for them throughout this entire time, because there wasn't good communication. And it seemed to be on purpose.
Exactly.
So there was a lot of dysfunction there, and then they were prepping us like, well, we might not even know who wins for some days or weeks. It's like,
why? And that's the thing. See, and that's the problem I have. Jocelyn Benson, instead of wasting that money and mailing out unsolicited absentee ballot applications, why wouldn't you spend that money to help bolster your clerk's offices, the people who are on the ground running the elections? Why would you not do that?
Yeah.
It would make better sense to help them. If you know they're going to be flooded with absentee ballot applications. I talked to some women who worked at one municipality, and they had to hire close to a couple dozen people just to accommodate the flood of absentee ballots they were going to get. And what about poor municipalities? They're not going to be able to hire that staff. So it will make sense that you provide additional support. I had a person who was a trustee in their township share with me that in Oakland County, our clerk was telling townships, that you guys could bring your ballots in, if you guys couldn't count them, bring them to us. That's a huge chain of custody breakdown. I'm not going to assume that she was necessarily being malicious. I don't have that evidence, but what I can say is that's a very sloppy procedure, and you open the door for fraud or just mistakes to occur, and the voter is disenfranchised nonetheless. We have to have a simple process where our clerks have the support that they need, instead of Benson wasting money on her personal agenda. That's what happened. She had a personal agenda in corrupting the election process, and it's very evidenced by the judge ruled against her for violating the Administrative Procedures Act when she told clerks to assume a signature is valid rather than not, but yet she was on Fox 2 Detroit Let It Rip debating Senator Jim Runstead, claiming that signature verification is a better way to establish identity over picture ID. That's absurd. That's completely absurd.
Write your name.
Yeah, and then she's going to talk about somebody could get a fake ID. And I'm like, Benson, you have got to be kidding me. That you mean to tell me that if I was going to commit, or somebody was going to go commit some kind of election fraud, it would be better for me to go get a fake ID than just fraudulent silent name? That doesn't even begin to make sense.
Yeah.
And then if you think that signature verification,
But why wouldn't you do both? Because you do sign.
Well, yeah, especially in the apps. For one, in the, like you said, with the in-person voting, you fill out the application to vote anyway.
Yeah.
So you sign your name and you present your ID. But when it comes to the absentee process, all you have is your signature. So the thing about it is signature verification in the absentee process is critical. So if you think that signature verification is the best way to affirm identity, why would you weaken that process?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense unless you're corrupt like she is.
Well, there's definitely some crazy things that they did this past election. For anyone to just assume, whether you're on the side of you believe everything happened legitimate or not legitimate, I don't see how you can say it happened smoothly, because no one wants to have an election where you don't know who wins that night. No one wants to have an election where anything is contested, or where people feel like it was cheated, or that the judges have to come back and rule that you didn't run things correctly.
And then also the question is, why didn't Jocelyn Benson, and when it came to audits, and I had a couple people from the news media interview me, and they said, well, audits happen. I said, no, that's false. Jocelyn Benson did a risk limited audit. Again, I've been talking to people in clerks' offices, and they were complaining that the risk limited audit was ridiculous. It amounted to a glorified recount. Jocelyn Benson didn't even follow her own post-election audit manual. So if everything was ran per the law, and you're having this contested election and everyone's suspicious, why would you not even follow your post-election audit manual and just scrutinize a couple ballots in these cities and say, see, nothing happened here, folks? Doesn't make any sense unless you have something to hide.
Now, I mean, you've talked about your issues and stuff, technical reasons, I guess, why you want to run. But why you? Why did you decide? I know you were there. I believe I was the first person you called when you got out of there, which is very flattering. It freaked me out, the things you were telling me, though. I'm just gonna be honest. but why you?
I love my country. America has been really good to me. Christina knows my passion for theology, and I just graduated from theology school. I was completely committed to spreading the gospel. And I still am. That part of me never leaves. I can't stop, because the souls of man, what could be more important? We all die. We fight in this life, and then for what? We all have to stand before God one day. So that never leaves. And part of my political fighting, if you will, what my relationship with Christ, it really spurred a lot of my political desires to things I want to fight for, like for life. I mean, if we have a society where we just slaughter children. I was reading a study done by the Charlotte Lozier Institute, and it was, I think, 37% of women who get abortions for the first time, they get pregnant again within 2 years. And then 60% of women who have, after their first abortion, their second pregnancy, they wind up aborting. So abortion is an issue that's so critical to me. But in order to fight for the lives of children, I had to enter the political arena. So a lot of these cultural issues, we have to enter the political arena to fight them. So fighting the political fights were always important to me. But after serving as a poll challenger, poll watcher, volunteering, I'm precinct delegate, state committee, all that stuff, and witnessing the corruption in our elections, I said to myself, I can't just sit here. I have to do something, because again, if we don't have secure elections, we don't have a country.
Yeah.
And that's just it. And a lot of people are looking for the smoking gun evidence to say, how bad was it? Any of it is bad. I don't care. I'll give you an example. So I was talking to a guy in northern Michigan who is a township supervisor. And in his township, he was looking at the election results and noticed an issue. In his township, there's 2 school boards. meaning so they have two separate ballots. So one of the batch of ballots, the tallies, was not sent in to the county clerk, and the county clerk, when by the time he noticed it, the county clerk had already sent the results to the Bureau of Elections. So he alerted the county clerk alerts the Bureau of Elections, and the Bureau of Elections, November 5th, says it's too late. So this is the kind of stuff we're talking about. So it's not about the presidential election. It's about us. It's that we, the people, have every right to pick who leads over us. And I feel Americans, we've gotten so comfortable because we're used to just getting up and enjoying our lives and everything of that sort, that we don't understand that what we have is strange. It's strange. If you look at human history, this is not what happens. I want that land. I came, I saw, I conquered. That's the way human history has always been. I don't care where you go, what continent you look at. When you start studying ancient civilizations in the Americas, they did the same things. It's just the way human beings have because of our unregenerate nature. But in America, we have this unique system where I don't have to fight and kill and go to war. I just go and cast a ballot. So that system must be protected. So that's why I said and then too, just my nature, I'm like, if I see a problem, I'm going to fix it. I don't want to just sit there and hope somebody else do a good job and then I'm belly aching because they didn't. So I'm going to just do it myself.
Well, it is odd that no one else has officially jumped in yet. That you are the only person running. Do you, especially since there has been a lot of chaos as far as like just how the state's been run during the pandemic. There's some people who are like devoted to the governor and the crazy stuff that she's done, but
the Whitmer regime.
But there's a lot of people who have been upset. So and a lot of people just think Nestle's, cuckoo
She's vulgar.
Anyway.
She's vulgar.
She's super vulgar, yeah.
She's vulgar.
And so you have these three ladies in the state not doing the best, and a lot of people who are upset about things. You would think that there'd be a really strong bench just chopping at the bit to get in. So do you think that is concerning, that maybe some more people in the know think that there's not a good chance that you can beat Vincent or that anyone can?
Well, that's a good question. Are people saying, well, why bother? Because the woman who ran a corrupted election, why wouldn't she run a corrupted election when her own position of power is under threat? I don't know why other people aren't. I mean, we're fighting and we're not going to let go. And this is the thing. I talked to a guy in a county that borders Indiana, and he said that after the election, he unregistered to vote. Then he wanted to re-register because he was so mad. And I've talked to several people who said, I'm not going to vote ever again. I said, well, folks, you can't do that. You can't. You can't do that. You have to continue to fight. You can't give up. It's too much at stake. And additionally, why other people haven't jumped in the race, I really don't know. I don't know. I mean, we've come out really strong. I mean, I think by the end of the month, we've done 100 events. So we're not playing around.
Yeah.
Yes, and so I took the summer off of work to campaign. So I've just been campaigning because I want people to know that I'm serious. This is not a career move. I went to theology school. I was so excited when I graduated from theology school. And, we had our neighborhood team and we were like, hey, guys, we're going to go to Cadillac Square and go spread the gospel. That's what we wanted to do. I was just so ready to be as just bold and as loud for Christ as humanly possible. So running for office was not in my lane at the time, but sometimes you have to do something, and so far we're really pleased, and I'm sure somebody probably will jump in, but they'll have a lot of ground to catch up to.
Yeah, well, the election is definitely different for a Secretary of State, and I guess I don't know how it's run in all states, but I do know in Michigan we do have a convention, and the delegates get to vote for who is on, the ballot, which we know that there's instances that can manipulate that to a degree, but I don't want to get into that today. But do you feel, I think someone probably will jump in, but do you feel pretty confident that you're going to get the nomination?
Yeah, we're feeling really comfortable with the nomination. We're feeling very comfortable with how much. Of course, we want to raise a lot more, but people have been very supportive. We've had over 1,000 donors so far, which is huge for a Secretary of State's race. And that's the perspective to put it in. That's typically the Secretary of State's race is like ignored. For this time, it's not. So we've been having massive support, and also we've been talking to people all over the state. And it's interesting. We've been spending a lot of time in the first district, and people often say like, "Thank you for coming." We get so ignored, and I'm thinking that's so foolish, because I get so much information from talking to people. Saying, "Hey, I have this incident. This happened to me." I mean, no person knows everything. So when you go and talk to people, and they're like, "Hey, I've had this problem," and I've had insurance agents bringing problems to me, and people who work in clerks' offices, and clerks bringing instances like clerks coming and saying, "Hey, we have this problem."
Yeah.
So a lot of this insight, what I'm talking about, is because clerks have shared information with me, or people who work in SOS branch offices share information with you, and like, we're having this problem, and we're having this problem, and we're having that problem. If I just stayed in my little bubble of the Tri-County most densely populated area, all those concerns are ignored, and you're supposed to service the entire state. You don't just service the Tri-County area. You service the entire state of Michigan. And so how can you be an effective public servant if you're not talking to the people that you plan on serving?
Yeah.
So we feel very, very comfortable that we'll be able to secure the nomination. And I feel also, being an outsider, this is the year of the outsider. This is the year of the outsider. If you look at everybody who's running for governor, none of them have held public office, which is interesting.
Yeah.
And I think that because people feel very frustrated with a lot of people who, and that's not, and I just to be clear, I'm not saying that someone who has held public office for some time is corrupt. I'm not saying that, but I think there is a tendency for people to kind of get sucked into the swamp. And people are worried about that.
When you first called, and I did get the inside information before you announced, but that you were running, and so I guess my first initial instinct was like, this is not a thing just to do. So I think I did ask you, well, what are you going to say when people say that you don't have the experience? And you'll have to, I guess, try to remember what you told me. But it was something along the lines of, we've convinced ourselves of basically a false narrative that our government it wasn't meant for people to just kind of be career politicians all the time and to serve the people. It's supposed to be, or people answering the call, basically. So you can say it in a very elegant way, whatever.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's that our system of government is designed for people to step out of their offices, their factories, their homes, their shops, wherever it is, your classroom, and go and be a public servant and go and serve for a period of time. And if the people that you serve are pleased with your job and say, "Hey, we want you to go to this position," then that's what you do. But I think we had too many people who see politics as a career. And being in office is a career, because what happens is now we have entered a point where what's the public official's number one job? To get reelected.
Yeah.
And that is what's happened. And as I said, we've convinced ourselves, we've created this faux aristocracy that only people who've passed through certain echelons are qualified to be public servants. And no, that's what made America unique, is that one day you could have a guy sitting in his factory and say, "You know what, I've had enough, I'm going to run and become mayor."
Yeah.
That's what makes America unique. Not that we need to go through a series of, you have to be from a certain family or pedigree or
a bunch of farmers can take down an empire.
Yeah. That's America. That's who we are. And so, another thing we've been doing in our campaign is encouraging other people to run for office. We feel like, we have this platform, so we want to use it to empower other people. Mm-hmm. We did an event on Saturday on the west side of the state in Jenison with Senator Wendy Rogers from Arizona. And at that event, the point of the event was educating people on things they can do to secure the election process. Becoming a poll watcher, becoming a poll challenger. County chairs can legally submit names to clerks in their cities and townships and villages of individuals who want to be election inspectors. And then the election commission has to submit the names of everybody who's been hired or appointed to be election inspectors. They send those names, political affiliations, and the precincts they're assigned to the county chairs. And then if the county chair thinks or is suspicious of a person who's appointed as an elected inspector, the county chair can challenge it. So they can challenge and say, "No, this person is not really a Republican. They're lying."
Well,
and so,
I think that's pretty important.
So that is huge. So we've been trying to educate people along the way, like, hey, these are things you can do. Show up for that accuracy test. As a poll challenger, you have rights. Know your rights. So this kind of stuff will help empower people. And this is how we take our country back from people who are just plundering the riches of America for their own gain, like the Bidens.
I do think it is important, though, if you are going to be a poll challenger, that you attend some kind of meeting where you are trained in what to look for, because a lot of people, they'll see things, they'll get excited, and they'll be like, this is the, and you'll see something that's not really a thing, and then you're just, we all appreciate you, but we don't want to be wasting a lot of people's time, so just make sure that you are educated as much as possible before you take on this role. It's an important role, and everyone is appreciated who participates in it, but you don't want to be calling false flags to every little thing, because then when something serious does happen, people do want to tune it out.
Yeah.
They see a list of things that are just false flags. You mentioned how you're pro-life, and of course I'm pro-life, and you gave such a great speech on the steps of the Capitol. It was so good. I called you, I was like, Kristina, that was so good. And I'm not easily impressed, but I was really impressed with your speech.
Thank you.
And how you said you kind of felt like a call to politics. It reminded me of like William Wilberforce, because you know, he had to make a decision like, because I know they didn't have too high of opinion of people who were like really into the gospel anyway back then, at the time, kind of like I guess in the social class in people in ministry. And so he kind of had to make a decision. Am I going to go full on like kind of ministry gospel kind of stuff, or am I going to stay in politics? And he talked to, is it John Newton who wrote Amazing Grace?
I don't remember.
And he said, you know, what if you are like Esther and you're called for such a time as this? And so he stayed in the fight, and obviously slavery was ended over there, and which, you know, helped to eventually end in other places as well. So if you're an average, everyday citizen, maybe you're someone who doesn't want to get too involved, you just kind of want to live your life, there's always a fight that's coming to you regardless of whether you want to get involved or not. And we're seeing that in so many different ways, whether it's like critical race theory or intersectionality or the transgender ideology coming to like kindergarten. I actually have a video that I want to play that I want you to react to.
Oh boy. I have lots to say.
You are gonna have lots to say to it. But there may be a time when you do need to step up to the plate and do something about it. So I appreciate that you did want to jump in the ring, and I know people were concerned when Benson first went. You said like people don't pay too much attention usually to the Secretary of State office, and we've consistently had like Republicans in office in that role, and so it's kind of rare to have a Democrat taken. But she was well funded, well backed. She used to work for a Southern Poverty Law Center, so that's a little bit of her background. Just FYI, that's a group that they solely exist to basically call everyone racist. That is what they do. So she has a pretty radical background, and she was pretty well funded, and so people were pretty terrified when she came in. And frankly, I think a lot of big Republicans thought she was going to win. Period. And and didn't put up much of a good fight.
Well, the problem was,
I mean, not the actual candidate that we had. Mary Traitor Lang
was amazing.
She worked very hard.
She worked, because Mary and I are from the same congressional district, and she worked extremely hard. I mean, we saw her at everything. Like, oh my God, Mary, there you are.
I'm like, what? I'm like, how'd she get in here?
And that's practically how it was. Mary was everywhere. She was everywhere. And so you're right. The thing about it was, you know, with marijuana on the ballot, that's what helped the Democrats.
Yeah, that did help hugely with the turnout.
Because they came out and they knew what they were doing by placing that on the ballot. It shouldn't.
Yeah, well, we had opportunities to not have that on the ballot, so there were some mistakes made. There were some mistakes made there.
Yeah, and you know, also the interesting thing too, while running, and you know, like I said, my primary reason for jumping in was to clean up the election system, but that doesn't mean that I'm not equally committed to the other issues of Secretary of State, because as you see what's happening with our branch offices, I mean, people waiting months for services, being charged late fees, that is unacceptable.
Yeah, so let's focus on that for a while, because I went to an event, and I think I talked to you after it happened, that someone said that they worked or had an aunt or a cousin or something that worked there, and basically, I mean, if you do try to get in, it would take like a month or 2 months, just really crazy to get in anywhere in Michigan. And then there are people who can get you in faster for a price. Yeah. so we got like an underground railroad to get into the Secretary of State office, and Benson was talking about permanently having it down and just be appointment only. So,
and the thing about it is she keeps referring to the walk-in system as take a number system, and I always find it so ironic how the left loves to act like they're the champion of the voiceless. But then what about people who pay cash for services? They have to go into a branch office, meaning they are stuck waiting months for services. Yeah. Then people are being charged late fees when it's not their fault that they were late in the first place. Mm-hmm. So how much money has the Secretary of State made through unjustly charging people late fees? Then you have when people have to do title transfers. I had one couple approach me that because they couldn't get into the Secretary of State's office and complete the title transfer process, sign over the title, the guy got in legal trouble in the car, and guess what? The car is still in their name, so then they had legal issues they had to deal with. Then I had a mayor on the west side of the state in Kent County tell me that in his town they're having an uptick in crime because there's cars riding around with no license plates. So there's so many issues with the Secretary of State's office, and she doesn't care because her whole reason for running was to corrupt the election system. Yes, election security is my primary focus as well, but that doesn't mean you neglect all your other responsibilities in that office, because people still have to go into the deal. We are forced to deal with the DMV. You think about farmers. What about farmers have to do their plates? What about truckers? So there's people who need the DMV not just for recreational vehicles or their everyday car. They need their work vehicles. And even if it is my everyday vehicle, you have people needing to get in for a boating license and what have you, and plates, and they have to wait months to get in, and then the season's almost over with. So even though that's a recreational activity, you still need to make sure that that every aspect of the office is running per the rule of law and with efficiency and competency.
Yeah, Senator Tom Barrett told a story about how his brother lost his wallet, and he was trying to get an ID, so he'd go get a new bank card and all that kind of other stuff, and he couldn't get in. So he called his brother. He said, "I don't know what to do." So he did flex his senator muscles and was like, "Y'all better get my brother in today." And so he's like, "But you should not have to have a brother who is a state senator in order to get an appointment or to get your ID at the Secretary of State office."
And that's the thing. I mean, someone shared a picture with me, and they were at a Lansing office of this man who went up to a Lansing office. He was obviously crippled. There were no customers inside the branch office. He asked to be waited on and said no because he didn't have an appointment. What about people who lack internet access? Especially in the UP, when you go to the UP, many places don't have the internet. So how they're going to make an appointment? Let me guess, they have to drive to their local library? I had a guy who's from the UP tell me that he estimates that 10% of people in the UP don't have electricity. So what do these people have to do? What about elderly people who struggle to use the internet? I was talking to an insurance agent that told me that it's become a burden on them because a lot of their elderly customers struggle to use the internet. So they have to go into their office and they have to help walk them through the process. And it's not that she minds servicing them. That's not the point. The point is now a lot of elderly people have lost their independence. Yeah. And Benson doesn't care. I mean, especially for elderly people, I think that's one of the struggles with getting older is losing your independence. So now you've put another thing that they have to be burdened with because she doesn't care. She doesn't care what people have to deal with. So she has to go. Did she say
it would be like an hour wait or less than a 30-minute wait or something?
And then this is the other thing to me about running for office. I'm not going to lie to people. I'm not going to say that I won't make a mistake or misspeak. I'm human. I'm not going to be perfect. But one thing I'll never do is I'll never lie to you. And Benson flat out lied to the public when she said 30-minute wait times. There is no way you can promise 30-minute wait times in the walk-in system. You cannot. If you go in and let's say it's a guy who has to renew 6 plates, a driver's license test person, and then a person who's doing a couple title transfers or whatever in front of you, that's going to take a while. There's 6 people in front of you. I may walk into an office and there's nobody in front of me. Yeah. I may walk into an office and there's one person in front of me who needs to take a new driver's license picture. So you can't promise wait times in a walk-in system. You just can't. Yeah. What you can do is improve the flow of operations. That way those people can be more quickly serviced. And then you don't have a big cluster where people are servicing both walk-in and appointments at the same time. You have a group of people specifically designated for appointments, a group of people specifically designated for walk-ins. That way the people with appointments can get out faster, and then that doesn't clog up the folks handling walk-in appointments. Yeah. You just improve the flow of operations. It's really not that complicated.
Yeah, the branch that's by my house. I mean, you could just text before the pandemic, before we had Benson as Secretary of State, because it's even before the pandemic, things started messing up with the Secretary of State office, and so before that age when Ruth was the last one. Yeah. Ruth Johnson was Secretary of State. You could just text in, I want to be in line. And then you'd be in line. And then not all of them are like that, but there's a lot of branches like that. You just text in line, tells you what time is your estimated time. It'll give you an update if whether it's taking longer, whether it can be faster, or whatever. And when you go in, you see your number, and they call you up. And it was really efficient in that kind of way, because nobody wants to be waiting there all the time. And no, so what we have now is just chaos. It's really inconvenient. Obviously, I can't just go up there. You have to have an appointment, in advance. And it's been really, really, really awful how, like I said, even pre-pandemic, and I'm just thinking about Mary Trader Lane, because I did help her on her campaign, and she was talking about doing mobile meetups and stuff for the seniors, and just all these plans that they had. It's just like Benson just came in and just ruined the branches.
Because she has an authority. This is how you understand about leftists. Everything is filtered through your worldview. As a believer, my worldview is filtered. Everything I see is filtered through the lens of Christ. And any capacity that I'm in, it's about service. It's about how can I serve people? How can I help people? So when I know that elderly people struggle to use the internet, when I know that elderly people, it's not, and this is the thing people need to understand when you're talking about elderly people, it's not that old people, as they become older, they become stupid. It's that as technology has changed at such an exponential level, many people have decided that they don't want to participate in it.
My mom's that way.
Yeah, and so they haven't. So now when you just change society, now this person's like, okay, now I got to figure out how to do this. I don't do it. I like the way I've been doing it. They're set in their ways, and there's nothing wrong with being set in their ways. I'm used to driving into my office and getting service and waiting and whatever. They don't want to figure out how to get an appointment. And then too, sometimes as people get older, they have certain dexterity issues that it's just a difficulty. So this happens, but they have a very utilitarian view of human beings. So the concerns of the elderly, she doesn't care.
And some people, especially when maybe you don't see your kids and other stuff as much as some people like being in person during those times with the tasks or whatever they do, just for the human interaction.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a human interaction kind of person. I'm extremely introverted, but
you love me.
I do love you.
So and that's the thing. She keeps referring to the walk-in system as the take-a-number system. And her story that branch employees banded together to lower wait times. The employees got together and said, "We just cannot have this take-a-number system." Really, Jocelyn? So you want me to believe that the employees got together and used that language? We don't want to take a number system. Who are you fooling? And so then the employees banded together and said they just can't have a take-a-number system. And they got together and said, we're going to be able to lower wait times. So how many employees were there? Where was the meeting? Where did it go? What time was it? Who believes that actually happened? Yeah. Nobody believes that actually happened. And she needs to return authority back to branch managers. Because how much better service could a branch manager provide? They're there every day. They know their community. They know their county. They know what services are going to be needed most often rather than not. So they're there to better provide services to people. And she just doesn't care because her whole focus was corrupting the election. So this is a rock in her shoe.
Well, I think another reason why they really wanted her in was obviously we had a ballot initiative that passed, which was really dishonest, but to their credit, they had very good marketing with the voters, not politicians. Mm-hmm. And so now we have a system where instead of our elected officials drafting out, where our district lines and stuff are, we have a unelected system of people who are supposedly randomly selected.
Yeah, let's see how that random process put together.
To create a panel that's going to carve out everything. And it's a pretty complicated process, but from what I hear with Republicans, they're pretty much on it as far as trying to make sure that things come out as fairly as possible. But I gotta say, it's been a disaster in some other places, but we'll hopefully people will stay pretty on it. But that's something that's overseen with the Secretary of State, and so I think that's another reason why they really, really wanted Benson to have it, and why that race in 2018 was of such important interest.
Yeah, a guy who donated to her campaign is one of the attorneys participating in the process. So it's like that, and then on top of that, their whole communities of interest. I mean, I'm sure you've talked about that on your show. That is completely absurd that you would want to have communities of interest based on immutable characteristics instead of communities of interest being based on things such as shared resources, and also if they start creating these congressional district lines based on these immutable characteristics, that's going to put a horrible burden on our clerks, because you may have 2 to 3 congressional districts in your city.
Yeah,
you might have easily.
You know, it's interesting because I have gone to events and they were like Democrat ones, because I was tracking, and
I did that before. I showed up at an Abdul El Said event when he was running for governor, and me and a friend, we just sat there like, huh, we're watching.
But everyone who was like talking about how they didn't want their lines changed too much is they really wanted to make sure that their communities sort of reflected where they are now, that it made sense. Like, and they never really explained the mutable characteristics that well. It was very vague, but that's how a lot of people on the left, they get away with a lot of things, by just weaponizing language. And I don't know, they make you try to feel dumb while not being specific.
They make up their own words, like intersectionality. They just make up words. You know what, Christina? I have an idea for your show. You need to make up a word, just deploy it into your language, and then talk to people as though they're supposed to. Not only they know the word, but they're an idiot if they don't subscribe to your definition.
You know, my dad did that in college. Like, he wanted to see if they could get the white kids just to start going around saying stuff. You know, I think it was one of his friends, and they were just going around saying muff. And so, like U of M, you just have people go around saying muff.
Yeah, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna come up with our own language, our own words. This is exactly what we're gonna do. Why not? Why can't we come up with our own? This is exactly what the left do, because if you can control language, you can control reality and people's perceptions. So I say we do it. I mean, I was talking to my county commissioner, who's a complete communist, about we're trying to stop mandatory vaccines in Oakland County. And he went in talking about Milton Friedman, and he brought up intersectionality. I'm like, what they got to do with anything? What does intersectionality have to do with mandatory or forced medical treatments? What are you talking about? You know, this is the kind of foolishness. So they create this fictitious language based on their postmodern, ridiculous worldview, and they want to impose it and create laws and policies and base society off of their false worldview. And it's not just a false worldview. When I say false, I don't just mean something I don't agree with or I think is untrue. I mean something that is fictitious. It doesn't even exist in reality.
Yeah.
Like there's an unlimited number of genders. Like where in reality are we? So we're just making things up. Christina, I am a unicorn. I'm a unicorn and a butterfly.
I've been told that. Actually, when we were in D.C., me and my sisters were on the way to the inaugural ball. Our Uber driver called us, like, you guys are some unicorns, because you're black conservatives.
Well, you're a unicorn, a butterfly, and I don't know what else. I think I'm gonna change it every day. And we're supposed to all just go along with it, not ask questions. And then they want to, and it's one thing if an individual wants to do this, but they want to completely restructure society.
Yeah,
based on that's the
and
problem.
Then they claim that it's for gender ideology, for example, which I'm going to play this video in a second. In that video that I talked about earlier, where it was I debunked, and anyone can go watch this video. Please watch this video on YouTube. But Ben Shapiro did a debunking of transgenderism, and so this trans woman, Sam Lux, decided to do a debunk of Ben's debunk, which wasn't really a debunk. So I debunked the debunk, I guess. And so
that's the tongue twister.
Yeah, it was fun to say, I guess. And so Ben made the point that these people cannot define woman without using the word woman. And so Sam was like, here is what WHO says. And so
who made the World Health Organization?
Yeah.
Who made them the authority of definitions? Yeah. Oh, another leftist organization.
I did point out that they did Taiwan dirty during the pandemic. But did you see that video when they just cut them off of the Zoom or call or whatever?
Probably China told them to.
There's no organization connected to money and politics that is just so pure that they would only care about the science.
Yeah,
this is just how life is. I'm sorry. There's nothing that's uncorrupt that has beyond corruption. But anyway, the definition of sex and gender, it mentioned that they're related to each other, and I make the argument of course they're related to each other. They are two different words, yeah, but of course, but they are related. They're meaningless without each other is my argument. But then they said that gender is like the gender of a woman or something would be like characteristics of what's being a woman or something like that. So it had like basically the word in the definition. So does that explain it to you, Ben? Did I just explain? I'm like, no, you like you just proved his point.
The thing about it is they like to say that gender is the social construct. No, the social construct of gender is based in biology. The reason why we have certain social constructs is because men and women are built differently. You know, when I would go on Fox 2 Detroit's Let It Rip, twice I had to debate the same transgender. And the last time the transgender person got mad at me because before he even made his comments, I already knew what he was going to say. I already knew what he was going to say from the beginning. The reason why men typically are soldiers is because men's bodies are built for combat. I've said that before. Okay, let a woman do an arm wrestle with your average man and let him go full force. He's going to beat you.
Yeah.
Men have more. They have testosterone, which not only makes a person more aggressive, but it impacts their decision-making abilities. Also, men have more dense bones, more muscle mass, bigger hearts, bigger lungs, and more hemoglobin in their blood. So that gives men certain physical advantages, and when it comes to strength and endurance, and speed. So strength, endurance, speed, things that are necessary for combat and athletics. Additionally, those are things that are necessary for protecting a community. Mm-hmm. Those are things necessary if you have to do long-term farming, building of a house, all types of things. There's a reason why men and women are different, why women are more nurturers. There's so many biological differences between men and women, and our complete societal constructs are based around those biological differences. So to try to create this false reality that defies biology, that somehow gender is some separate category, they just literally make up words. They just make up words and build a false society around, a fictitious society around
my
these
sister
words.
called me yesterday before I went live to tell me about how she got blocked on by this trans person, because they were having a discussion about some men putting on fingernail polish or something, and she didn't like it. And I don't know how the conversation. Well, the trans person didn't think we should have any labels on that stuff, gender specific stuff. And my sister said, eventually got to. She's like, I worked in retail and I had to help a lot of trans people, and if they were trans women, they shopped in the women's section, whatever part they identified. So there's a disconnect, like where you say you don't want things to be gendered, but you identify in this particular gender and these characteristics.
It's author of confusion. That's all I gotta say.
Author of confusion. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this video and prepare yourself.
Story time. This has been my first year in preschool with a class of my own, teaching alongside another queer neurodivergent educator, and we have been rocking our twos class. We've been talking about gender and skin color and consent and empathy and our bodies and autonomy. It's been fabulous. But our teaching team is shifting and a new person is being onboarded, someone with many years of experience. So today at the lunch table, when the topic of gender and genitals came up, one of our students plainly looked up and said, "Well, I'm a girl today, but I know that teacher Co isn't." No, they're NB. And the look on the incoming teacher's face was priceless. She was shocked in a good way, and she just looked around at the two of us and said, "This class is incredible, and I am so impressed."
Homeschool your kids.
You know, this is the perversion that's happening. So I talked about this before. I was on the sex education board for Detroit Public Schools, and they were trying.
I reference you like all the time, by the way.
And I still have the documents where they were trying to introduce education to kids, talking about gender and sexuality. And this is something that people understand about sex. Okay, let's be frank. As Christian, we're gonna talk about this in biblical terms. God created sex for the procreation of the human race, and He made it fun. So we would do it, just like seasoning on your food, okay? If eating was a painful and a horrible process, most people wouldn't eat. And if sex was a painful and miserable process, most of us wouldn't exist. However, people have the liberty to pick and choose whichever life that they want. However, there are certain biological realities that exist around sex and gender that children instinctively know because it deals with their very existence. So when you take preschoolers and you want to teach them to explore their gender and sexuality, to me, it's very pedophilic. Period. It's completely pedophilic. Why do you want children to think about sex? What adults do is their business. I mean, it is. I have my opinions. I am a Christian. I live my life lined up with the Bible. And you cannot. That is your choice. Mm-hmm. That is your business. The government has no business involving themselves in that, just to be clear, because I am running for office. The government has no business involving themselves in that. However, as a citizen, we have a right, we have a duty to protect our children. And even as government officials, we should not be teaching children about sex and gender and all this. Why are preschoolers thinking about that? You think they're not going to get into the pleasures reality of sex? They're just going to talk about it, just this externality, just you have these genitals here and that's just it. And you're talking about relationships and sex. Anytime you get into gender and sexuality, you're necessarily talking about sex. Yeah. You can't divorce sex from gender and sexuality. You can't. So why are we talking about sex with preschoolers? This is a path to pedophilia. I don't care what anybody says. You're not going to convince me otherwise, because there's no reason to talk to little kids about this. No reason.
Well, there was a private school in, you can't just watch out for public schools. Private school, it was in New York, so who knows what the heck goes on there. But where they were teaching about those sort of specific sort of genitals and like touching yourself and they made a little cartoon that they played.
Yeah, I mean, they teach kids about masturbation. Why are you teaching that to little kids? Why do you need? And I remember this is a video out of Minnesota where their legislatures were meeting, and a guy was one of their legislators was reading out of the sex ed curriculum that Planned Parenthood was putting forward. And in this sex ed curriculum, it was very detailed about sex. I mean, to little kids, why? And excuse me, since we're talking about the subject, I'm not to be explicit, but why would a kindergarten need to learn about anal sex? Why? Why? You cannot tell me these people are not pedophilic in nature. Why do a child does not need to think about this? It's like, the thing about sex, you don't awaken that sleeping giant. Yeah. And you don't, because it brings so much confusion and corruption. And those are urges that a child cannot act on. They should not act on. So now you've aroused these desires and feelings in a child, and they can act on it. They don't have the mental and emotional capacity to rationalize and handle those feelings. So therefore, if it comes up, you deal with it. Let the parents deal with it, because sex is so consequential. A lot of the social downfall we see in society is because of sexual immorality. Yeah, you have to see it. You know, you have just children being born in all types of chaotic environments where people are not prepared. Kids don't just exist through osmosis; they come into existence through sex. So we have to have responsibility when it comes to how we govern our lives, sexually speaking. However, when you have government entities want to go in schools and start indoctrinating children to explore gender and sexuality, what is the reason for that? Yeah. And say, well, some kids have their feelings. Some people have all types of feelings. That don't mean we go and teach it to the kids en masse. And this is something.
You could call the parents and tell them to have a talk or something. But do I want random psycho preschool lady?
It's like they want to
indoctrinate my kids.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, why is she excited? Like, I mean, I've worked.
We're talking about kids' genitals. That's creepy.
That is completely pedophilic. I mean, I have worked with kindergartners. I have worked with I have never once thought to I'm going to talk to my this preschooler or this kindergartner about genitals. That never crossed my mind when I worked with kindergartners.
In Michigan, sex education is supposed to be for the purpose of people not having to prevent pregnancy.
Exactly. If you read the law in the state of Michigan, the purpose of sex education, which I believe the government should not be involved in sex education, however, it exists, so believers need to be in those spaces. The purpose of sex education is to prevent sex, prevent pregnancies, and to prevent STDs and STIs. So nowhere in that do we need to teach kids to explore their gender and sexuality. Nothing in that. When I was in school, it was completely it was biology. Yeah. When we had sex, it wasn't about worldview. It was just pure biology. Like we talked about the animal and plant reproductive cycle. This is how babies are made. Period. End of story. That's it. And now, because this is how babies are made, and because of the financial the financial realities that come with parenthood, this is why you shouldn't have sex until you're married. That's what it was taught to us, and that was it. But now let's teach kindergartners about exploring their sexuality and how people do different things with their bodies, and you think the kids are going to want to try to explore each other's bodies? I mean,
and why? Setting the door what does gender identity, which is how you feel, what does that have to do with sex education anyway? If one is how you feel and another is connected to your biology, that they don't have to have any kind of conversation in regards to like sex education about how people identify.
I think they're even. I agree with you, and but they're taking it outside of sex education. They're going to introduce it into literature and all kind of stuff. They're going to inject it into any space they can to get kids thinking about sex. Again, there's no good reason that a person wants kids to think about sex unless they have pedophilic tendencies. And I've seen all types of things where, I remember this was in Australia. And this guy named George Christensen, he's an MP from Australia. He might still be an MP, where they were having like with Safe Schools leader. And this man wrote an article. And in the article, he said that the relationship between an adult and their child sex partner is like that between the relationship between a parent and a child. So in Australia, they still installed this man into this space to oversee anti-bullying program when the man was an advocate for pedophilia. And this happened in Australia.
Yeah.
This happened. This is not tinfoil hat, come bring in the troops. No, this is really what is going on in our nation. And I'm tired.
We're seeing weird, the story, drag time, story time hour. There was one library who had like a man in some kind of colorful baboon sex outfit. And they apologized like, oh, we're so sorry if we're offending. Like, who is this psychopath and why is he employed in that jail?
I mean, this is the thing. Like you said, the outfit, they had the rear end was exposed, enlarged male genital was attached to the monkey suit, and you're running around a kid's library. And people aren't supposed to be concerned. And I think what's happening is, especially as believers, we have an obligation to push back. I think for many people it's unsettling. I think this is where a lot of millennials can really stand up in these spaces. I believe that as millennials, we're used to a crude culture. I grew up watching Tom Green. We talk about crude, right? So we're used to crudeness. And with us being used to crudeness, a lot of these very delicate conversations, we feel very comfortable having because we're not shocked and appalled by everything. We're more angered by it. And I think that millennials need to take that reality of our personalities and use that to warn society of what's happening, because I feel oftentimes as believers we don't want to talk about this stuff because it's uncomfortable, it's awkward, it makes us feel icky. But your kids are being taught it in school. They're being conditioned to rebel against God. And also, irrespective of religious beliefs, I don't care what your religious beliefs are, I think any adult, I don't care what you believe, we should all be able to agree that teaching preschoolers about sex is a bad idea.
Yeah. There's people, I'll have conversations about abortion, especially like people have so many dumb takes on TikTok. It's ridiculous. And there's a lot of big accounts from young people who just have the most absurd opinions on things. But abortion is a big topic. And usually you'll have someone who'll say like, well, if we just teach more sex education, then why don't you just do that and want to give people more access to them? It's like, because your goal is apparently to encourage people to have it, and I think we should encourage kids to wait. And if you mentioned abstinence, it's such a boogeyman. Like, oh my gosh, that's so unrealistic. Oh, I'm sorry, it's unrealistic to mention the only thing that works.
It's our society. We're hedonistic. I mean, this is the thing when people push sex education. Well, I have a novel idea. Human beings have been doing this for a really long time, and I don't think they needed any education to do it. I think they kind of just figure it out.
Yeah. But you know what? If they really wanted to have some sex education that was really going to scare people straight, you could bring in some men who can't have no money because all they stuff going to child support. You can really show the effects of what can happen if you do things too early and scare some people like the show Scared Straight, when they send in like people who've been to prison to scare kids into acting right. Like, man, I got no money because my old lady got it. That's what you could do. And also, like, why not show, like, Life Action News just came out with a video of a very detailed demonstration of from the time, an egg is fertilized to it actually becoming a baby. And so people need to understand what they are talking about when a child is 14 months, 15 months, or whatever. I just got to see a sonogram for the first time last week. And it it was beautiful. It was amazing. And this is a 14-week-old, fetus. And I'm just went out of there like, abortion is the most evil, despicable thing that we allow in our society, and how dare we do it?
It's an attack on humanity. We attack our children by sexually corrupting them, and then we attack babies in the womb by killing them. It's an attack on humanity. And that's what I see happening. And these things shouldn't be political. It should be common sense for any adult to be disturbed by preschoolers learning about sex. Any person, kindergartners, first graders, nobody needs to learn about that. And then the things about it, if you look around America, the stuff gets more and more vulgar.
Yeah.
It's extremely pornographic. Why would you want a second grader to learn about that? They struggle as it is. They're just trying to figure life out. They don't need their lives corrupted and confused with feelings and desires you've awakened in them, that if they act on them, they'll get in trouble or cause all kind of long-term life problems like you used to talk about. So many men are struggling financially right now because they have children with women, and now they have to pay tons in child support. How many women are struggling because they have to raise a child alone?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about all the social ills that sexual dysfunction causes society, and oftentimes as Christians, when we try to talk about it, people think we're just being prudes and we're boring and we're repressed. Yeah, what has the sexual revolution done for society? Tell me in one way how the sexual revolution has helped society. People are depressed. People have so many STDs. I mean, now I saw a video where they were saying we're going to destigmatize herpes. Why is that? 'Cause so many people got it. I mean, this kind of stuff is a problem. You having poverty, dysfunctional children. In my job in education, so I'm a college professor, but I teach in a particular program where I teach high school kids college classes, and I really, really love my job. So I have this exercise my students do where we all get on a piece of paper, they write down a topic. They write down a topic on a piece of paper. I said, but don't put your name on the paper, because I want you to write down anything. I want it to be an open space where we can talk about anything, because even though I'm very strong in my worldview, I welcome other people to dialogue with me. I don't have this idea of like my way, the highway. So anyway, so I said, write down any topic you want. We just have a free-for-all discussion. The one topic that puts my students to the complete stop? Parents. The word parents, they start crying, hugging each other, sharing about all these issues. Okay, again, this directly ties back to the problems of our sexual immorality in our culture, because people are having kids that they're not prepared to have.
Yeah.
They're conceiving children where they're not spiritually, emotionally, and financially ready to have these children. And the answer isn't abortion. The answer is encouraging people to sexually submit themselves to Christ. That's the solution. But in society, we don't want to do that because it's not fun. It's not fun. We're hedonists. We just want to indulge. And then all these broken-hearted children are laying wait. All these broken-hearted children are just left behind, and nobody wants to talk about it because we're too busy having fun.
Well, I think, it is good to be prepared to actually be able to do those things with the money and and all those. But I think the problem that we have that's really large with society today is that you talk about your influence as a servant of Christ to be a servant. There's a lot of people who just don't want to serve. Like we just have a really selfish mentality, even that's surrounding the abortion issue. Like people aren't even mature, brave enough to really talk about the child involved. They just have to say my body, my choice, or talk about it as a woman's health issue, and they totally ignore that there's two other people involved. But there's especially one other person involved, but there's the man who helped you conceive the child, and there's this child itself. They want to totally ignore it, or you see so many conversations. If you even try to push back a little bit, they're like, "It's my body, it's my body." Like you have no sense of self-sacrifice at all, and you see that spilling out to other issues like with the economy and so on. Like people don't want to go back to work, and they feel like, well, the employer should just pay people. Like you're trying to bankrupt them, and what about people have to raise prices, and it's all about what you think you deserve for whatever reason. That's not legit. And then you got people who know better, like the Biden administration. I think Blinken, his Secretary of State, tweeted out something that was like a news article. It was like, well, now people get to really try to negotiate their wages because they won't go back and they have to keep raising prices. And he's like, yes. I'm just like, this is ruining the economy, right?
But that gets into my whole problem with the globalists, and these people are not that stupid. They are not.
They're not.
They know precise. That's what they're trying to do. I refuse to believe these people are just incompetent to think that, we're going to sit here and just tank the economy, and we didn't know that's what we're doing. It's all by design.
There are people who are just so stuck in their ideology, they've
That's
been
true,
trained it, and they don't know how to think critically. And I won't accredit them with just pure evil, and they just have a dumb worldview. Especially there's a lot of kids, and there's people who went through college, that people like Ben Shapiro and stuff were complaining about, like, hey, there's these people who are like trying to get me arrested for like having a conversation. This is going to be a problem. And then the press and other people just try to ignore it, like, oh, it's not that, you're just complaining. It's like, no, these people are now your counselors or your kids' school teachers, they're lawyers throwing Molotov cocktails and BLM rallies and stuff. And that there was a group of lawyers that threw like Molotov cocktails like at those things. So that is a specific example. So these people grew up, and they grew up without learning how to think critically, and they just have all these feelings that they feel are so validated. Everyone talks about your opinion is valid. Your opinion, no, every opinion isn't valid. You have it, but that doesn't mean that it is valid. That it's based in facts and logic and reason. You have a lot of emotions that you want everyone to just assure, but that doesn't mean it's rooted in any sort of realism at all.
Yeah, you're right about that, and it's destroying society because people just want to have their feelings validated, and they want to get their goodness through their worldview. That's the problem with secularism. They want to get their goodness from their worldview. That's their salvation.
Yeah.
All of us want to be saved, and that's the thing. And all of us want to be saved. All of us want to be good people, and they get their goodness from pointing out how horrible you are, and you get your salvation by buying into their worldview. But as believers, as Christians, none of us are good. This gets into a whole other theological discussion, about total depravity, how depraved are humans, but none of us are good. We're all wicked sinners. That's just the reality of it, but it's only because of the grace of God, there go I. And as a Christian, you take that worldview and you take that humility. So even though there's people I radically disagree with, but I still see them as fellow image bearers. They are fellow human beings made in the likeness and image of God. So I can't hate that person. No matter how strongly I disagree with this person, I have to pray for that person, and I have to care about that person. But when you get your salvation from pointing out how horrible people are and making sure you go and ruin them, well, then that means you're not going to see wonderfulness. You're not going to see the goodness of people because they have some intrinsic value. You're going to have a very utilitarian view of people. Only if you serve my needs of my salvation, which makes me a good person, then I'm going to want goodness for you. And if you don't serve the needs and don't buy into my view, then I get my goodness by making sure you're ruined. Yeah. And that's dangerous. Like you said, these people are lawyers, and worldview matter. Truth matters. And this is why we have to have the marketplace of ideas. And I feel like too many people, Christians and conservatives alike, that once we have a certain professional goal, we kind of abdicate from a responsibility of entering into those spaces and speaking up, because it's not politically convenient. It's not convenient business-wise. I'll lose my business. I'll lose this. Listen, you're going to lose your nation. Maybe even your life. If you think these crazy people from Antifa, like they were in Portland, did you see the video where they were attacking these people having a church service?
Yeah, I did.
And they're just beating people up. You think they're going to stop? You really think they're going to stop assaulting people, beating people up for not agreeing with them, vandalizing businesses? Come on, it's definitely going to get worse.
There's people who are absolutely just violent in those things, but there's like corporations like critical race theory, which we don't have time to get into, but I see that kind of ideology. It's not just it is in the schools. It is in the schools. Please go to blacktnews.com and check out the article that I wrote about that. But it's in your schools, but it's in your corporations. I have someone who keeps telling me about trainings that they have. It's in corporate America. It's in the military, and if only they had stopped learning about white rage and how to safely get people out of Afghanistan instead. That's what they should have been doing instead of flying gay flags over Afghanistan. They should have been had different priorities.
I'm sure that inflamed the Taliban even more. So the thing about it, and it's not just critical race theory, it's critical theory in general. The whole premise behind critical theory is pitting people against one another.
Yeah.
And even in people sometimes I guess want to make that claim about Christianity that it's divisive. No, it's not. It's uniting, because it's saying that all of us are horrible and none of us are good. Only he is good.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah.
where you guys are putting people in two caribou.
We can treat each other good, like how we'd want to be treated.
Yes. Exactly. And two, uniquely, only the Christian worldview teaches that, Judeo-Christian worldview, shall I say, that I'm supposed to be kind to everybody, even people who don't agree with me, even though people who radically
misuse you.
People who I radically disagree with, people who I know are trying to persecute me, I'm still supposed to pray and be kind to them. That doesn't mean I don't defend myself, but I'm still supposed to pray and be kind. With the leftist worldview, that is not what happened. It's all about making them pay. And so when we enter into these political fights, like when I get up in campaign events and I say, listen, this is my philosophy. If it doesn't violate the word of God or it doesn't violate the U.S. Constitution or Michigan Constitution, I'm going to do it. And I'm unapologetically saying that because I'm done playing nice with these Marxists who will ruin you for blinking wrong. If you don't toe the line and utter the mantra, dot every I, cross every T, if you don't utter the mantra in complete perfect order, they will ruin you. Look what they did with J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Perfect example. She pointed out the obvious. Men can't be women. Men cannot play in women's athletics. They crucified her. You had Martina Navratilova, who was a gay rights icon, came out against allowing biological men to compete in women's sports. They came after her. I mean, she was the one that left this love.
They're mad at Carrie Underwood yesterday because she liked a video that Matt Walsh did when he went to a Tennessee school board in Nashville to say we shouldn't be forcing our kids to wear masks.
And that's the point. And so now, now people like, and this is the whole point. The reason why they do this, we're mad at you because you like this video. We're mad at Martina Navratilova. It's because they want purism. They're tyrants. And so the way you stop a tyrant, as in any bully, isn't to back down. You boss up, as we say in Detroit.
Boss up.
You boss up and you keep going. And that's the thing we have to do. We have to say, okay, well, you said this. I know on the campaign trail, I know I'm going to get called a right winger. She's a Christian this, a Christian that. I'm not going to back down. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to back down from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Why would I? No, absolutely not. I'm not going to back down from the truth. I'm not going to back down from my conservative principles. It may, some people say, well, it may be politically expedient, maybe politically beneficial. No, it's not, because I have to stand before God one day and give an answer. And the thing about it is I'm still supposed to love and kindness and walk in grace and truth. Yeah, you have grace, but you got to have truth. And we cannot sit back while these people steamroll society. And this isn't about liberals versus conservatives. This is about Marxists against everybody.
Yeah, the last thing, I just want to say two things because I know you you're busy. You got to get going. So we could literally go on forever.
Yes.
But I do want to point out Kimberly Crenshaw, who's one of the people who wrote Critical Race Theory. Joy Reid had her on her show some time ago to just kind of dispel that it's Marxism and other kind of stuff. She's like, I hate to ask damn questions because I don't want you to think I'm dumb. But is it Marxism? And she explained what it was, but she didn't say, no, it's not Marxism. And then Joy Reid brought up the term Marxism again later, and she did not address it at all. I'm like, these people know what they're doing.
Yeah, because they're Marxists. That's the thing. It's Marxists versus everybody. So I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian. You should be pushing back against these people because they will come for you. Yeah. Because there will. Right now, you have on your mask super tight where you're sweating.
They have to push back against you because their worldview requires tearing down all the systems.
Yeah, exactly. So you may be in the good graces of the Marxists now, but there will come a day, my fellow Democratic friend, where you will disagree with these people. And when you express how you may not agree 100%, they're going to try to ruin you. So you better stop a bully now while you can.
Yeah, and
before you can't.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to bring up, just to let you know, because we talk about perversion and stuff, Dana Nessel literally campaigned on the fact that I am not a man, therefore I will not sexually assault you. And I am not joking. And so Dana Nessel is not the person you'd be running against, but she is one of the three ladies who is,
I have a nickname for them. I'm not going to say. I've been told I can't say it.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. And so the last thing, someone, I think it's at USA, someone, US, or maybe it's US, in the comments. So I think you've stirred the people. You've given them, you excited the people watching today. I do apologize for the earlier audio issue, but please visit blacktnews.com. Check out content that I have on the website. Again, please share like the Critical Race Theory article I mentioned. The Department of Homeland Security has come out and said that if you're against mandates and stuff, they gotta watch you, man. So make sure that you're sharing that, because I saw a video of someone put 1984 and they had the Lion King music in the background, like it is time, and they put it in the nonfiction section.
They have to. You got to put it. I mean, and this is why we have to push back. We cannot let up. I don't care where you are, what space you are in life. If you want our freedoms to remain, you better push back. If you don't want your 3-year-old being taught to explore their gender identity like in preschool, you need to push back. Okay. Yeah. There's no longer deciding which side you're going to be on. Either you're going to let it happen or you're going to stop it from happening.
Yeah. And please check out merchandise on blacktnews.com. I got this goat hoodie in different colors. It's super comfortable. And And also check out this Denounce White Supremacy, Defeat Joe Biden shirt. Got a list on the back of the racist stuff Joe Biden's done. You can get this. I voted for President Trump, and all I got was historic peace deals, border security, ISIS destroyed, and a bunch of other things on there, and this lousy T-shirt. I saw quite a few TikToks about people missing Trump and like Trump's face and like the bat light signal kind of up in the sky. I certainly wish things were different, especially with this Afghanistan thing going on right now.
So sad.
I'm not the victim you're looking for.
I need that.
You said you need that. I figured you'd like that. What about the Constitution is a glorious liberty document?
That's a great shirt.
Oh, be better, not better.
Oh, that's perfect. I love it.
And got some stuff with black tea, and of course the "You Are Not That Special," and got the mugs and stuff. So please check out the different merchandise that we have at the store on blacktnews.com. And if you would like to donate, you can do so. Obviously, this whole time there's been a ticker thing across the screen with PayPal or Cash App, but you guys can go to blacktnews.com/donate and leave a donation. So, Christina, how can people find out more about your campaign and what you're doing and follow you and so on?
Yeah, so Kristina Karamo, Christina with a K, Kristina. Karamo, Karamo. So you can go to my website and make a donation, help my campaign. It will cost millions to defeat Benson, so I need your support. Any amount is appreciated. I would like you to donate the max $7,150, but if you can't do that, any amount would be much appreciated. So yeah, please check out our website, learn about the news. We're constantly we're stirring trouble. We're ready to fight. We're not backing down. We're defending liberties for everybody, irrespective of political affiliation. That's what I want people to know. Irrespective of political affiliation, I'm determined to defend the election, to defend your vote, and to make sure that you have excellent customer service every time you walk into a SOS branch office.
And the last thing I do want to thank our sponsors again, Brighter Michigan Pack, and this opportunity to be in the studio using the equipment. Again, they don't care if we triggered you. It doesn't work like that. I'm just in the space. They're not my boss. But they are doing a fundraiser coming up. You can go to Brighter Michigan Pack, their website, and find out about it. It's at a beautiful, beautiful mansion. It's a beautiful estate. We went to the last party they had, and we had a lot of fun. There's going to be drinks and food, and you pay the price of admission, and all that stuff is afforded to you. And they're going to have Madison Cawthorn, Congressman Madison Cawthorn. You know, he's the one who was in the wheelchair and stood up at the RNC, who decided to stand up for the flag when we got all these people who disrespect our nation. So,
but yeah, I do have a question for people who are watching. If I could have one more question. The people who don't like America, number one, why don't you leave? Number two, for people who have issues with the Constitution, that makes me think when you talk about that, like what part of the Constitution you don't like? I think that should be your next episode. You get a leftist on here and let them explain why they don't like the Constitution. So should I be able to take away your freedom?
Because it wasn't written for brown people.
So what part of freedom of speech?
That's what they told me.
Right. Allison, that's what they told me. So I would love to have a round table with leftists who don't like the Constitution. I would bring so much tea. We'd be pouring tea all day. Right?
Okay, thank you guys so much for tuning in today, and I'll see you tomorrow.